What's up, guys? This is the Atheist Chef here. I am making another reply video to Gman, one to his modern day slavery, and also in part to basically the kind of recent string of videos and discussions about him, between him and Matt Dillahunty, about slavery, about how slavery back in the Old Testament is not the same as the slavery most commonly, seen, back there in the early colonial days with African Americans. He was saying that it was, Jewish slavery was a lot different. This video is here to show he is partially correct, that there is some differences, but there are some very big things that I have yet to see argue, because I may have missed it, but I felt as if it needed to be brought up. But first, I wanted to get into the modern day slavery bit. Basically, he equated debt to slavery, and to that I sort of agree. I mean, I totally get where he's going. That because you're in debt, you're relatively, pretty much a slave, because you're having to work, and work so much to pay off all this debt. I'm about $20,000 in debt. So I guess, technically I'm in debt, and I could argue, but I'm in a contract with these people, kind of things, and somebody could say, and then this is a good point where Gman would say, but yes, these Hebrew people, they were in a contract to pay off because they were in debt, so they had to work to pay off their debt. However, where that argument falls apart, and G-Man, please correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm missing a step, I am kind of generalizing this, so I don't mean to, kind of straw man your argument. If there's something I missed, please let me know. I don't mean to do so. But to get back, but the difference is that his argument is that, or it falls apart, is that people were able to buy non-Hebrew slaves, the foreigner slaves, and they didn't enter some kind of contract saying that they were in debt, and so they said to this person, a lot of times there was village conquests, city and town conquests, and people were taken as slaves. There is no way to believe that these people were just volunteering themselves to do the same thing as the Hebrews did. And I'm going to get into those scriptures later. But again, I'm kind of bouncing around. But back to the modern day slavery thing, is that being in debt, that kind of slavery, as you're calling it, G-Man, is not the same thing as what they had even back then. Yes, I have to work to pay off my debts. Yes, I have to, I'll be paying these guys for a long dang time. But just because I owe somebody money doesn't necessarily mean that I am their slave. Where it seems like there is not an agreement on the definition in terms of the word slavery. So it's just a little bit different. There's definitely a difference in slavery back in the day to this, well, you're stuck on this endless cycle of paying them money for years and years at a time. I mean, I'm not stuck in a rinky-dink little small 2x2 area. I know that's exaggerating. While, forced into making mud huts and, working in this debt that will never end, being treated cruelly or anything. No, I'm just stuck paying. There is a healthy level of difference between the two. So maybe it's a kind of slavery in a sense, but there is definitely no equating the modern day slavery to the slavery of the day, except for the modern day slavery of where there actually is people that are suffering and all this kind of different stuff. But something like me and you, the average Joe in America, we're not in a real slavery. We're just under a crushing debt. But anyways, let's get on to the video. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. And if he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him.
If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and children, and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door and the doorpost, and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. For those of you keeping up with Matt Dillahunty and Gman's exchanges that happen mostly on the Atheist Experience, and then Gman has done a few videos about it, Matt Dillahunty pulled up the scripture to argue with Gman about the idea that Hebrew slaves, that were treated, differently. Now, in this video, you'll see that I have to agree with them on this, that the Hebrew slaves were definitely better treated than other slaves. So the Hebrew slaves, the ones that were, indebted, to their fellow Hebrew, yeah, they had it pretty good. But Matt Dillahunty uses scripture to show that it was kind of a dick move to keep the slave. He gives the slave owner gives the slave a wife, and if the husband wants to stay with the wife and the kids, then then he has to say, oh, I love my master and I want to stay. So that's, as Matt Dillahunty was saying, that just seems a little immoral, or again, as I said earlier, kind of a dick move to keep him as a slave. But that's all I had to say on that part. If any of your people, Hebrew men or Hebrew women, sell themselves to you and serve you 6 years, in the 7th year you must let them go free. And when you release them, do not send them away empty-handed. Supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Give to them as the Lord your God has blessed you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I give you this command today. Now, when I first started researching this, I had heard Gman's, argument that slavery was different then as it is now. And when I saw the scripture, I thought, holy crap, Gman actually has a point. You can see in the scripture where it says, to give them the wine, give them some, some animals and all that stuff, set them on their way. They pay their debt. And I thought, holy crap, he's got a point. But then I remembered that was just for the Hebrew slaves. There's plenty of verses about what you do with slaves that are not Hebrew. However, you may purchase male or female slaves from among the foreigners who live among you. You may also purchase the children of such resident foreigners, including those who have been born in your land. You may treat them as property, passing them on to your children as permanent inheritance. You may treat your slaves like this, but the people of Israel, your relatives, must never be treated this way. This scripture is apparently where myself and Gman will differ. This is a obvious scripture showing the difference between a Hebrew slave and then a slave that is from another country. It says to keep them as property, that you can pass them down to your kids as permanent inheritance. Gman and those like him will preach that it was just so they could work off a debt. This is way different, being known as property and just being passed on to their kids. No, I'm sorry, Gman, I have to disagree with you. This is completely different and more along the lines of slavery that we are arguing about, and does not sound like your standard, paying off of a debt, because it says you can just go out and buy them. That is not the same thing. When a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod so hard that the slave dies under his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, the slave survives for a day or two, he is not to be punished, since the slave is his own property. So if a master beats his slave to the point of death, then he gets punished. But if the slave survives for 2 or 3 days, then the master doesn't get punished. Yeah, that's a really big difference between what the Hebrew slaves had to do and what the treatment that they got than what than the foreigner slaves received. Gman, I do not believe you have much of a leg to stand on by arguing that we have a big misconception about the kind of slavery that they had back then. Yes, the Hebrew slaves, the ones that were indebted, and either they intentionally put themselves up for slavery among their fellow Hebrew. Yeah, they definitely got a lot better end of the deal. But the foreign slaves, the ones that were most likely were done against their will, as you said, they were going to be bought from other countries and passed off as property, given to their kids for permanent inheritance, beat to an inch of their lives. Yeah, that's a little bit different. So, G-Man, I encourage you, make another video, leave me a comment. Everybody else as well, please leave a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to me. Let me know how much I suck. Let me know how I am so awesome that you just love all these videos, that you just yearn for more. Do whatever. Please, I want to be involved. I want to be able to do more. This is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying these. But that's it. Thanks a lot, guys. This is the Atheist Chef signing off, saying, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And when you fill your heart with bad information, it won't be long before people figure out you're filled with something, and it definitely won't be wisdom.